Look, competition is going to be everywhere. And it doesn't matter what business you get in.
Yeah.
There's going to be competition. And if there's not, and you're successful, then people are going to break off and leave you. And they're going to notice that there's not much competition out there. And then all of a sudden, the people that you trained and loved are going to be your competition.
Right.
So in anything, there's going to be competition. What I would say, and to answering your question, is
welcome everyone to Behind the Scenes. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin. You are watching Behind the Scenes with TK Business Magazine. This is where we're continuing the conversation, where we are going behind the scenes with business owners and entrepreneurs, where you get to learn how the Topeka economy thrives, right? On all of our small businesses and entrepreneurs. Today, we are going behind the scenes with CEO and owner of Mammoth Sports Construction, Jake Farrant. Welcome to the show, Jake.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming to Meriden. So, Danielle, I appreciate it.
I know. I would say I haven't been out here pretty often, but pretty honored to, one, have the opportunity to sit down with you and get a scope of your office. It's absolutely beautiful. You know, you were telling me about this table that you have here and how majority of your furniture is all local, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been local for us, and that goes all the way back to our early days of the local Walmart. We bought all the card tables that we worked off of too. So, no, I will say that I'll start by saying thank you to TK Magazine and everything they've done. I hope everybody in Topeka, especially the business world, really appreciates what they're doing. Such a unique, special magazine for our community, and an amazing networking opportunity. And going back, 5-6 years ago, we still have some articles hanging up on the wall that Braden and Tara came out and did for Bryce and I. So we've always appreciated the attention and highlighting different small business owners. So really appreciate you coming out.
Yeah. And speaking of unique, what I think is really unique is Mammoth Sports Construction. And earlier I was telling you about how you guys have like a bomb machine that is happening right now here in Kansas, out here in Meriden. And I think the beautiful thing is that you guys are doing something that no one else is doing. And so I always like to set the stage a little bit, and let's kind of go back to the beginning stages when you guys were first known as Kansas Turf.
Yeah.
Back when in 2009, you decided to leave a stable job and kind of just take the leap. So take me back there.
Yeah. So any entrepreneur that or current employee wanting to be an entrepreneur knows the phrase "take the leap."
Mm-hmm.
And for us, and for Kaisa and I, who's now my wife, the leap was, hey, we're gonna go out on our own, and we see this small sector that could be served better. But you do it, and you do it with no money. And we had, and when I say we, Kaisa and I, my wife, she was still in college at K-State. We had like $10 to our name. So in order to start the business, we leaned on my parents, my mom and my dad. We moved back into my mom's house. And, I was pretty sure Kaisa was going to, hit the road.
Yeah, she was like, I'm not staying around for this.
I had talked to myself, like once I told her, like, hey, I'm going to move back into my mom's house and start this business, she was going to leave me.
Yeah.
And then I was going to have to like win her back, but to Kaisa's credit, she never winced. And the people that know her know that she's kind of the backbone of everything we do.
Yeah.
She'd stayed steady with me, and we built it from the first dollar on up to what it is today. So, but anytime the entrepreneur thinks about taking that leap, you're supposed to be scared. You're supposed to have a lot of anxiety, and everybody needs to be told that that's okay.
Right.
It's all right. But you can't have if you are taking that leap and you're just thinking about failure. Mm-hmm. I promise you. Don't leap. Stay wherever you're at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you're worried about failure, you won't have the right mindset to navigate the waters.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen that way.
One of the things I also love about your company is that you guys have this phrase everywhere, which is like, do something big, right? And so I'm curious for yourself as Jake, as the CEO, owner, and as a person, did you see Mammoth getting this big?
So that's a common question.
Yeah.
And I'll run into people I haven't seen in 5-10 years, and they said, could you ever imagine that? So in general, my answer to that, Danielle, is kind of like, oh no, we're so fortunate and so lucky, so blessed.
Yeah.
All those things are true. But without vision and without dreaming, it doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah.
This doesn't it doesn't happen. So there's two sides of that story. I didn't sketch out on a napkin Mammoth sports construction and being a world leader, but I had big dreams and goals and aspirations, and that had to stay at the forefront of every decision we made.
Yeah.
So two-part answer there.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, and I think you're absolutely correct that it does take vision, and it really just takes believing in what you are creating.
Yeah.
And so, take me back to a time where you were trying to break through the market, right? Because there was a time where you guys were still trying to figure it out, and you were trying to go national, and there were like a few challenges along the way. What happened back then for you to say, okay, this is what we need to do to pivot?
Yeah.
So take me back there.
Sure. So our story, and to answer that question, is if it was just me and maybe some of my family members, we'd still be mowing yards in Topeka. Because that's about where my talent takes us.
Yeah.
So what made the difference is when we started adding the talent around us and people that were exposed to different sectors. So I think about like Steve Noble, Dr. Steve Noble, when he came to Mammoth, and here he is. He's a superintendent of Seaman School District. I didn't know the people that Steve Noble knows. He knows every single superintendent in the entire state of Kansas.
Yeah.
When I think about Dave DeVore coming on, he's our architect, head of design. I didn't know a single architect. Like that wasn't Dave knows them all.
Right.
And he had designed collegiate stadiums like the Bill Snyder family stadium. I mean, some big names. So when those people decide to come to Mammoth, it enters Mammoth into that space that they have or that they've spent their whole life developing.
Yeah.
So the only thing that I can speak to that as far as building it is I have been and will continue to be a good recruiter.
Right.
We need the best people at Mammoth, and when we have the best, it doesn't surprise me, where the business goes.
Right. And can you talk a little bit about, because I think right now we live in a time where there's a lot of entrepreneurs trying to do things on their own. And maybe in the beginning you have to do that, but talk about the power of collaboration and how you can also make strategic decisions by collaborating with other people. And it doesn't mean that your name's going to be taken away, right? But just saying that, how can collaborating with other people be probably the most strategic thing that you do?
Yeah. Cody Foster said something to me 7-8 years ago that still resonates when he said, people will be blown away when they just ask the questions. And he was talking about mentorship and at the time, I really looked up to the leaders of Topeka. And when I think about the leaders of Topeka, I'm talking specifically the business leaders. Yeah. So, like Timmy Krieger, and he was at a bank at that time, and Neil Spencer running a third or fourth generation business, and Ernest Spencer Metals. Rich Tarwater, and he's run, his, again, family, taking it over, passing it down to his family. But I looked at these business owners and I was a sponge. Like anything that they were willing to say or give me or tell me, I took it in. So it didn't matter if Cody tweeted out like man, I just read this crazy book, and I was downloading that book that minute. And if I ran into Neil Spencer at the gas station, and he said, well, I've really been trying to meditate more. So I get up 15 minutes early and meditate. Well, I was doing it the next morning.
Yeah.
So what I would say to those young entrepreneurs is the people that have been successful, and this is what Cody was saying, is don't be afraid to copy them and use them as inspiration, and then ask questions,
right? And
straight up ask them, what do you do and what worked? And the other part of that is those guys that I mentioned, all of them are willing to go to lunch with just about anybody and give away information. So it's pretty amazing. And that's not, I can't give that advice to anybody that's not in Topeka, Kansas. I think Topeka, Kansas, people are pretty special and nicer than other places in the world. So that's just part of the Mammoth story. And we've really been accepted by those leaders, and it's really helped our company.
Yeah. Speaking of your company, you guys have made tremendous growth over the years, right? Getting to the Inc. 5000 list. What decisions did you make back then to get you to this space?
Sure. So growth in business is it's calculated risk, and growth can be very scary, expensive. It also can be rewarding. So as an entrepreneur, business owner, you have to constantly you're weighing the options of risk and reward. Yeah. And if we spend the money to grow in this sector, the payoff could potentially be this. And I'm taking you all the way back to like when we decided we were going to go from 0-turn mowers and we were going to buy a tractor and a batwing mower, we could mow this many acres in a day versus this many acres. So you're constantly juggling, gauging, and taking those calculated risk.
Right.
And with growth, the other thing that I would say that we've done at Mammoth is we've never sat around a table and strategized and said, we're going to do this and then we're going to grow to that. What happens is we listen to our customers, and the customer takes us to where we need to go. And the customer, we're just listening. And if the customers are telling us, yeah, that's great, you can do our turf, and that's great, you can do our tracks, and that's great, you can do our press boxes. We still haven't figured out how to site plan and merge everything together on campus. Or we haven't figured out how to take our indoor facility, and someday we want to fundraise them. And, so what we do is we listen to our customer, and then naturally our scope has grown. But volume wise, and then when you start taking on what the customer is asking you to do, and you look like, oh my gosh, then you have to go recruit. And so now you're getting the people and the resources to be able to fulfill what the customer needs. Yeah.
Remind me, how many employees do you guys have?
So here locally, we have about 300 employees, and then we have 2 offices in Kansas City and an office in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Right. So that speaks to the growth of having a company that sustains even during the momentum, right? A lot of business owners, they always say that obviously the first, 3 years are the hardest, and they don't sustain after that. But obviously you guys have surpassed that. But talk to me about your culture, right? You guys have a unique culture here. I mean, everything from your website to your location. I think it's a beautiful thing. So tell me, what's the special sauce behind that?
Well, thank you. First of all, that's a very nice compliment. Culture obviously is a buzzword, and for any business person out there, entrepreneur, and employee, I think employees seek out culture, and what's a fit for them. So what we push through our company is, you're going to have a culture whether you work on it or not. It's there. And for us, our culture is really what you tolerate and what you celebrate. So if you tolerate certain things, your culture will adapt to that.
Yeah.
And if you don't celebrate certain things, your culture will morph into that. So, and I'll give you just a few hot topics for us.
Yeah.
We don't tolerate second place. So we're in a business of sports, and when we lose, if we lose something around here, and that comes in different ways, right? Speaking construction terms, we don't miss deadlines. We don't miss budgets, because that would be losing, and we don't tolerate that. So it's not a question. You do whatever it takes to not lose. And when this is the sports side of me, and going back to being in the playing and coaching days, but there's nothing better when a team comes together and works really, really hard for something, and they achieve it together.
Right.
That creates an amazing locker room.
Yeah.
And that's really what we have here is a business version of a locker room.
So I know you do a lot of personal development, right? So I know there's so many books out there. There's so many resources, but if you can nail down on one that gives you the pathway and the direction on how to maintain culture, maintain, your staff being happy, and also maintaining your growth in business.
And I wish there was a secret one.
I know. That's what I was like, okay, nail it down to maybe your favorite now.
It's a great question. It is, because if I was an entrepreneur listening to this, I would want to know what you just asked.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to narrow it down to just one. So I think you really have to come up with what your why is, and why you exist as a company. And again, I'm not trying to answer these as just Mammoth,
right?
But entrepreneurs in general. So if you're going to be an entrepreneur and open a nacho stand, you have to have are you going to make the first nachos ever? That would be hard, but you could come up with a version of nachos that nobody's ever done before. Are you going to have the best nachos ever? So then you can go into all those reasons,
right?
But you have to really figure out your why. And for us, we kind of bounce in between boundaries. So, and I'm going to go back to culture, and you mentioned it, the books and the podcasts and everything. So we kind of like have a David Goggins about us, which is stay hard and mother effer this and
that
really
helps
get
with that
after
competitive edge a little bit.
Yeah, and then. But then the very next sentence out of my mouth will be a quote from Brene Brown.
Okay.
And, I think she's influenced our culture as much as anybody as far as professional development, because we just believe about being the power of vulnerability. And so,
wow.
Yeah, if you're a 22-year-old or if you're a 42-year-old that said, you know what, I'm leaving my job today, pick up David Goggins and Brene Brown, and then you're off to the right start.
I think that's a really good mix, because I've heard a little bit of both, and definitely Brene, she definitely brings out that power of vulnerability.
That's probably, and then you'll see different things around our office referencing Phil Knight's story and Shoe Dog and the story of Nike.
Yeah,
and I've read Shoe Dog and listened to it. I'm 2 or 3 times of both and gone through with highlighters, because I love the story. Up until Phil Knight was a multi-millionaire and the company went public.
Yeah.
He was struggling with all the things that business owners struggle with, whether it's liquidity or supply and demand or customer. It's such a good book, and that's another one. So I gave 3 recommendations.
Yeah, you did.
That's pretty good.
You narrowed it down for us. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy is with Spotify and just like this podcast, I think this is a great resource that TK is doing. I would tell people to just kind of like shop local.
Yeah.
Sure. I would use professional development local. There's plenty of resources here in Topeka. and there is good people here that are giving great advice.
So Jake, going into that competitive edge, because I think nowadays there is a lot of noise, right? People are getting overloaded with a lot of information. Many people may feel like their market is oversaturated, depending on what market they're in. Talk about the significance of value proposition in your business, right? Understanding what value do you bring to the table and how do you stand out from the rest? And so maybe you can share from Mammoth standpoint or just even from a business standpoint, why that factor is so important.
Yeah. These are great questions. It's almost like you interview for a living or a profession.
Just a little bit. That's fine.
No, these are good. All right. So, look, competition is going to be everywhere. And it doesn't matter what business you get in. There's going to be competition. And if there's not, and you're successful, then people are going to break off and leave you. And they're going to notice that there's not much competition out there. And then all of a sudden, the people that you trained and loved are going to be your competition.
Right.
So in anything, there's going to be competition. What I would say, and to answering your question, is at Mammoth, we really focus on running our own race. So there's quite a bit of competition. But we just stay to our story and our race, and running our own race. And we don't compare ourselves a lot to the competition. I think that's a dangerous thing to do. Because as soon as you start scrolling on social media and you start looking at their website and what they wore and the awards they got and everything, and then that's not healthy. I mean, we have proven science behind that sitting there scrolling is not healthy for you. So focusing on ourselves, and I love that you already asked about the personal development, because our business has to do that too. So our individuals have to do it, and then our business has to do it. So we're constantly looking at ourselves in the mirror of what should we improve, what can we do next, and what did we do this year that we could have done better. And really, if we just focus on our interaction with our clients and ourselves, and then every once in a while, like today, sitting down here with you kind of think like, oh wow, like this, we are doing something great. This is a good deal.
Oh yeah.
But other than that, I would say keep your nose to the grinding stone, keep your blinders on, and work hard, and treat people really well, and run your own race.
Okay, so Jake, you've spoken about eliminating dysfunction to foster growth. I don't know if you remember saying that in a recent article. But first, let's talk about, what does that mean to you? Yeah,
it means the same thing to me today that it did. I think that was several years ago. I probably said that. When you think of a tree, when a tree grows, and if you have a professional arborist come out, a lot of times you have to trim up the branches of the tree in order for it to continue healthy growth upward. It can get too wide and too heavy, and when the tree feels that, it stunts its own growth. So arborists will trim the tree, and so that it can continue to grow into what it's supposed to become. And businesses are really similar to that. I think when you go through those growth times, and look, every business owner, entrepreneur, they want to say that they've gotten every single hire right. They want to say that they made all the right decisions. I mean, it's a crapshoot.
Right.
It really is. And you know what? Your business changes. I change as a owner or boss, and therefore I can't expect that people don't change too. So people change. Their life at home changes. They get married and have 2 kids, so they don't want to travel anymore. So with all the change, you're gonna have disruption or turnover, and so what happens though is you get tied to relationships, and you really become friends with people. And there's this personal side of things, and then there's the business side of things. And I will say to any entrepreneur, whether you have 4 employees or 400 or 4,000, that is one of the most difficult things that you're going to have to deal with day in and day out. Is that people side.
Right.
So what Bryce and I and we have an amazing HR person, Melissa Smith. What we try to do is constantly ask ourselves if we were in their shoes, or if the roles were reversed, and are we asking somebody to do something we've never done ourselves, or we wouldn't be willing to do. So if I'm not willing to go stay in a hotel room in Marion, Illinois for 3 nights, then I don't want to ask, one of our employees to do the same thing. Yeah. So, it's going to be a natural process. Turnover is going to be natural. And it's actually, it hurts when it happens. Mm-hmm. Whether you have to fire somebody or they quit and go to somebody, it just hurts. And it always does. That's part of this. Yeah. This as in business. If it doesn't hurt, I have different types of advice for you. Yeah. But, it always hurts, and then you turn around and you reflect on it 6 days later, 6 weeks, 6 months later, mm-hmm. and you're like, wow, that was the best thing for us, and we really grew from that.
Right.
And again, I'll go back to the advice that we were given how to grow Mammoth was from really smart people, here in Topeka.
Right.
And I remember going to some of those guys and saying, man, I think I'm going to have to do this. And they said, yeah, trust your gut and do it. And mm-hmm. it hurts, but those people will appreciate the conversation. They might not be happy about it, but they will appreciate it. And so, going back to listeners and being entrepreneurs, there's no doubt in my mind, anybody that's listening to this, and if you're running a business mm-hmm. with any amount of employees, you're already relating to me, because it's a tough relationship to uphold.
For sure. And I think this is why this podcast is important, because I think for someone like you and where you are currently, they can easily say, oh, this was easy, right? Like, just give me the cheat codes, Jake, right? Like, how did you get there so fast, right? But they don't see the behind the scenes, the hard work, the late nights, right? The meetings that you're working past 5, right? Yeah. The times where you were probably spending away from your family. Mm-hmm. So if we could go behind the scenes a little bit more, of Jake, the person and individual, talk to me about your sacrifices.
Yeah, sacrifice is such a key word to any kind of success, mm-hmm. So even if you're a high school athlete, if you're experiencing success right now on the basketball court or volleyball court, is because of all the sacrifices and hard work and the things you missed out on because you were training at practice. So, when people think the Mammoth grow fast, I always almost faint, because it feels like such a long, continuous, not a struggle by any means, but a journey. It's a journey. It's a battle. Business is battle, and it is 15 years now. So,
it's a long journey.
And the sacrifices that I make today are different than the ones I made in year 1 and 2. Right. But, it's worth it. Mm-hmm. And I go all the way back to those first couple of years. And I remember when my first daughter was born, I came home, and I was home for a couple of days, and then I was gone for another 6 months, but in a strange way, mm-hmm. I miss those days. Yeah. I miss.
Why is that?
Because back then, you at the end of the day, I shut off the dozer or skid loader, mm-hmm. And you turn around as the sun's going down, and you're like, this is what I built today. Yeah. And you get to see it, and you get to touch it and feel it, and you get to see this progress. And in my mind, I was sitting there thinking, like, driving home, like, I'm building something for my kids. I'm working hard. Wow. Well, today, I was in like 13 meetings.
Still today.
And it's hard. Sometimes it's hard for me to be like, geez, I didn't build anything, and because that's my roots is
being like hands-on.
Yeah, being hands-on. Mm-hmm. And so, as your business grows, you're going to become less involved in the actual details. Right. And that can be very difficult, and so we try, really hard to stay in touch with at least the customer, and the job sites and the guys, but that's a difficult part of it. And look, you made such a great point on sacrifices. Like, embrace those, embrace the suck of building something.
Right.
And if you listen to an audiobook, read a book, any of the mega successful people. So your Elon Musk, your Bill Gates, Zuckerberg. I mean,
yeah,
they constantly, Phil Knight constantly say that it was not about where I'm at today. Like, what I miss is the journey.
Yeah.
It was all about the process. And I would do anything to go back to those days where we were in the boardroom fighting until midnight, like that was building it. That was passion. And so somehow you have to balance that stress of what you're currently going through and lift yourself up out of it and realize that, man, there's going to be a day soon or, later down life where I'm going to really miss this. And so try to embrace it. And look, I think I mentioned some of those Topeka business owners. The biggest of the big that everybody knows, or some of the smalls. We can't. We're still going through trials, and we're still a part of the journey, and there's still ups and downs of every day and every week. So don't get discouraged by those.
Right. Yeah. So you mentioned something earlier that kind of struck a chord about legacy. But before we get there, I want to ask you, I know you guys do thousands of projects, and I know this is probably, again, another cliche general question, but if you can nail down a project that was like really fun or even challenging, right? That you were like, ooh, like we got through that one, but it was very challenging, which I'm sure stretched you and helped with your growth. What project would you say, yeah, that was a time I'll never forget?
Yeah. So we interviewed for a project, a Division II project up in South Dakota. And the athletic director called and said, hey, I got great news. We want to select you. And I think we interviewed, I think there's a total of like 17 companies and, 2 or 3 rounds of interviews to get this. It was a pretty big job. So getting that phone call, I pulled over immediately, goosebumps and rush of adrenaline. And so we won the job. And they said, and there was a big but there. He said, but we're not familiar with Kansas turf, and we're not familiar with your team or your products, but we trust you. We want you. So we need you to be on the job site every day.
Wow.
Yeah. In South Dakota, 8 hours away in Aberdeen, South Dakota. And I said, you got it, without hesitating. So, and my wife a few weeks earlier had just had our 3rd kid.
Oh my gosh. She's like, what did you say?
So I'm driving home. Yeah. I'm driving home from Aberdeen, and I'm working on my phone, making phone calls. And I walk into the house and I said, honey, you're never going to guess it, but I bought an RV for us. And she was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, yeah, it's going to be great. We're going to have the funnest summer ever. And she was like, yeah, I went camping as a kid. It's going to be awesome. I was like, yeah, we're kind of not, we're going to like camp, but we're kind of going to live in it for the next 4 or 5 months. Yeah. And we end up taking the kids. The grandparents brought their camper up, and we lived up there in a camping park, and went to work every day at the college. Came home to the RV with Kaisa and the kids. But we still, as a family, pull up pictures of that summer all the time. It was interesting, but it was an amazing deal. Yeah. And it was definitely a part of our growth. And you look all over this office, we have pictures of that project all over the place. And wow. We have some people that were a part of that project from Aberdeen that are a big part of our company now, that moved down here to Kansas after the project was over. And so, yeah, that one ranks up there pretty high. We love our KU and K-State projects here locally. We love our hometown schools. Here at Jeff West, we brought home the New Orleans Saints football field after we removed it and installed it here. So that's it always is going to be one of our favorite projects too. But
yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks for asking, though.
Yeah. It's like you would have thought that was a sacrificial season, but it turned out to be a memory that you wouldn't forget.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you got to remember that, right? So
Yeah.
when you're going through what you feel like is a super sacrifice in this big trial, now is one of our family's best memories,
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, Jake. So, wrapping us up here, land the plane. I'm going to ask you a 2-part question, but if you could go back to your younger self and give yourself advice for any entrepreneur or business owner out there, what would you say to them? And then for Jake yourself, what does legacy look like? What's next for Mammoth?
Sure. Well, the going back and being able to talk to myself, that would be very beneficial, because I did a lot of dumb things. I made a lot of bad decisions in growing Mammoth, and I could save us a lot of money. But no, I think every entrepreneur lies awake at night, and you let the boogeyman, the cloud of doubt and failure can be such a heavy weight on your chest. And that I remember feeling that like it was yesterday, and somehow, some way, I could wish I could send a message in a bottle back to myself. And all I need to say is you're going to make it.
Yeah.
Because that's all that you care about. You just want to know that you're going to make payroll that Friday or the next Friday. You want to know that you're not going to put your family out on the streets. You want, and you think about an entrepreneur. They're not just trying to make money for themselves, but anytime you have an employee, that employee has three kids. So if you have 10 employees with 3 kids each, and I mean, you're starting to, now you have 40 mouths to feed, not your 10 employees, you have 40.
Yeah.
And that always weighed heavily on me. And so I wish I could say that you're going to make it. And I hope that young entrepreneurs believe in themselves enough, and you can't let the doubt of failure take over. You really got to believe that you can make it. But legacy, I never think about that. That's not something I sit around and talk about or plan for. Naturally, I tell people to take pressure off myself. I tell people a lot that I only have one job, and that's to make sure that my wife and kids love Christ and go to heaven. So if I focus in on that, then everything else becomes really clear.
Yeah.
And then it kind of takes care of itself. And then all of a sudden your priorities really start to funnel in and make sense for you. So that's where I'm at on legacy. I highly doubt, because I'm not that talented, so they're not going to make any statues or anything.
Hey, you never know.
But what Mammoth goes on to do, the things that we're proud of is we change communities, I think, forever. Our projects change communities forever.
Yeah.
Our talented design team and creative team help bonds pass, and they help visions come to life. Those things matter to a lot of people, and the probably the part that Kais and I and Bryce and Chrissy are the most proud of is our foundation with Woolly Farms. And we have a lot of people in Topeka that are a part of that foundation and help support it and promote it.
Yeah.
And Woolly Farms is based around adults with special needs, including my brother that has Down syndrome. So lifting them up and providing them with a place to belong. And, when we started that, kind of like Kansas Turf, it was pretty selfish. We're trying to figure out what Cameron was going to do after high school,
right?
And where was he going to belong at every day. And now it's up over 30 of his friends. We call them members that come to Meriden every single day from Topeka and surrounding communities. It's turned into a very, very special place every single day. So maybe Mammoth and we're talking about legacy. that's where that's where my heart goes to is my kids, my wife, and then what happens with Woolly Farms, I think could be and already is pretty special.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Jake, I appreciate your time here.
Well,
you gave a lot of nuggets. I feel like I just had my own like personal, like professional and personal development insight with you. I really appreciate it.
Well, hey, come to Meriden anytime. You don't need a passport. You can make it here same day trip from Topeka.
Right.
I give Topeka a hard time that because really Meriden's a bedroom community.
Yeah.
We're a part of Topeka and part of the ecosystem for sure. And so we really appreciate you guys including us and TK and thanks for coming out.
Definitely. We appreciate your time. We just want to remind you to stay tuned to TK Business Magazine. Go ahead and find behind the scenes at tkmagazine.com. That's where you can find all of our episodes. But in the meantime, and in the words of Mammoth, do something big. Have a great day.